What up? What's up? Are you guys all right? I just want to start this morning with a little bit of a confession. Okay, is that cool? I'm gonna need a little more interaction. It's Camp Sunday morning, right? We're celebrating camp. We just watched a cool camp video. We've had a little bit more upbeat stuff. Okay, so if there's not the interaction here, I'm gonna start calling people out. We're gonna make you stand up. We're gonna play games. It's gonna be crazy if we don't get a little bit of participation. But yes, thank you. But here's the thing. I'm an addict. I am an addict. And my addiction is not unlike a lot of other addictions, right? There are highs associated with it, there are lows associated with it. But I am addicted. Whoa, that was my bad, Kenneth. I'm addicted to the spiritual high. I love camp. I love the moments at camp because we get away. We get to go and spend time away from our friends, our family that we normally are around, and we get out onto the campsite and we get to spend our time with God, and everything is focused on God in those moments. And in that, you get this like spiritual high. You get to this mountaintop moment, and it's awesome. You don't like, it's a place where you feel so close to God. You feel like nothing can touch you because you feel like that intimacy with God is like, it's huge. Like we have this great spiritual high, and then what happens is that we leave camp and you get back into your normal routine of life, and it's like you start on the mountaintop, and slowly over time that energy and excitement and that closeness with God seems to slowly fade and fade and fade until we are no longer on this spiritual high. We're just walking through life like normal, like it was before we went to camp. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced that spiritual high moment? Maybe it was through a revival. Anybody gone to an old-fashioned tent revival? Anybody in here? Yeah? You have this like close moments with God, the energy, you're meeting every day. Maybe you've had a spiritual high moment through a service here, right? You come on a Sunday morning, it fills your cup, and you get super excited. You're ready to take on the world, and then you get back into your normal routine of life. And it's not to say that you're not trying to spend time with God or stay close with God, but what happens is just life gets busy. Life gets in the way, and slowly over time, that closeness that you felt with God slowly fades and fades until it's back to the normal life. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that these spiritually high moments are a necessary part of our journey. I think they're important because they're moments that we can mark and that we can remember as we go on in our faith and we get closer to God. But here's the thing. We don't have to just rely on moments. We don't just have to rely on those moments to carry us in our faith journey, to carry us in our intimacy with God. You with me? So this morning, we're going to look at a passage, okay, in Exodus chapter 34. So if you have a Bible, if you have a phone, go ahead and get there in Exodus chapter 34. But I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory, okay? And this is how I like to do it. I like to read the titles in my book, in my Bible, because that's the best way to get a summary of what's happened before. If you didn't know that, you read the titles, and then it tells you everything that's happened. So, up to this point, Moses had gone up on Mount Sinai. I'm back in chapter 32 in case you really wanted to follow along and make sure I'm telling you the truth. But in chapter 32, Moses was on the mountain, and he went away for a really long time. And basically what happened was the Israelites decided that they were tired of waiting for Moses, and so they decided to make a golden calf. And what happened when Moses came down the mountain was that he was upset and angry, and so he decided to break these tablets that he had made, that he had chiseled out. And then we get closer and closer to our chapter, and Moses is back up on the mountain. Okay, he's back up on the mountain and he's meeting with God. And so we're in chapter 34, starting in verse 29. It says, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands. Okay, so these are the 2 new tablets. Because remember, he broke the old ones because he was angry. How many of you have broken something when you've been angry? Nobody? I broke a Xbox controller one time because I lost a game of Madden, and I threw it against the couch, and I thought it wasn't going to break, but it did. But that's totally different than Moses' situation. But I just wanted to share that with you guys because I'm just confessing things this morning. But anyway, all right, back to Moses. When Moses came down from the Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, that his face was radiant, they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near to him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. So here we are. Moses is, right? I've kind of given you the backstory up to this point. He has gone up to the mountain to remake the tablets that he broke. Not because of playing video games, but because of the golden calf, right? He was frustrated. But he's up there. He is meeting with the Lord. And if you look ahead a couple verses in chapter 34, in verse 28, it says, Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. 40 days and 40 nights. How many of you have gone 40 days and 40 nights without bread or water? Anybody? I've gone about 6 hours without bread and I just had water, but I'm already hungry. Imagine spending, just for a second. You guys got to wake up and smile a little bit. But here's the thing, imagine spending 40 days without food. It's a long time, right? All right, participation. Who would be hungry after 40 days of no food? All right, everybody, cool. We're all on the same page, right? So he's been there on the mountain for 40 days, right? And 40 nights without bread or water. And he comes down, and his face is glowing. It's radiant, right? And we see that the Israelites are afraid. Aaron and them, they said, something's weird. They went away, and they were afraid. I'm just recapping the story for you in my own little way, okay? Just so you guys know, I'm not just making this up. Anyway, side note, my brain is all over the place all the time, and you guys are just getting a real glimpse of it. Because at camp, I can do this, and the kids laugh at me. Here, you guys just look at me like I'm crazy, which is fine, but whatever. Anyway, so he's on the mountain, makes the new tablets. He comes down the mountain, and his face is radiant, right? And so then what happens is he goes to the Israelites, and they are afraid, right? Because his face is glowing. If my face was glowing, you'd probably be afraid too, right? But then, let's see. He goes and calls him back to himself, right, to tell him what the Lord had said. And after that, he goes and covers his face with a veil. You following along? He covers his face with a veil. Why? Because he didn't want them to see that the radiance was fading. He didn't want them to see that that was going away. But when he would go and meet with the Lord, he would do what? He would take off you guys are getting good at this. You're getting good at this. I can't wait for Scott to come up and preach one Sunday and you guys fill in the blank for him. I hope you guys are just as enthusiastic as it right now. But anyway, all right. So he would put the veil back over his face until he went to speak with the Lord. There's 3 things that that sounds so preachy. There are 3 things that I want to share with you from this story. It's a 3-point sermon, in case you're wondering, giving you a chance to, anyway, My note said transition. That was the transition. Point 1, all right? If you're writing stuff down, if you got a notebook, here's point number 1. Ready? Okay. Spending time with God changes us. Spending time with God changes us. We see in the story that Moses, when he spent time with God, it changed him. Right? Literally, like it says that his face was radiant. But when we spend time with God, when we are able to get away and spend intimate moments with God, it changes us. It changes the way that we talk. It changes the way that we act. It changes the way, maybe it changes the way that you walk, but that was just going to rhyme. But it changes us, right? There should be a change. When we spend time with God, we start to like put away things of the flesh, things of the world, and it starts to look more like God. We start to act more like Jesus. You guys know there's a research study. I think it was done in 1987, but it might have been 1997. They're about the same year. Anyway, it's like 10 years apart, right? And I think it was the University of Michigan or something, but no one really cares about Michigan, okay? But it was this research study where they did this study looking at married couples and how married couples started to look more like each other. Have you ever seen this phenomenon where like a couple gets married, they look a little different, but like as time goes on, they start to look more like siblings? Have you seen that? It's a thing. Like I promise you, Google it, study where married couples look more like each other on Google, and you'll find it. It comes up, the first thing I think that comes up is some insider thing you have to subscribe to, but then the next one is a good one. So, but it's a research study where it says couples started to look more like each other. The more that they spend time with each other, the more that they're around each other, they started to look like each other. And it happens with you guys too, I promise you. I hope this works. But whenever you spend time with people, do you ever pick up on their catchphrases? So I have a phrase, and I'm hoping that this works, but I love to say the phrase, "Come on," right? And the more that I say that phrase, the more that I start to hear people say it back to me, right? Our 1829 group some of them are over here, they say that all the time, right? Well, now they're going to be quiet. Thanks very much. Yeah. But when you're around people, the more that you're around people, the more you start to like pick up on their phrases. Like I have a buddy, his name is Chris. We work on camp stuff a lot together. And when we spend a lot of time together, we start to like share the same phrases. So whenever he agreed with something, instead of saying like, okay, or all right, he would say 100%. And I noticed, not when I was talking to him, but when I was talking with other people, like when I agreed with something, I'd be like, 100%. And it didn't take me it took me a while to realize I was copying what he had said, but it was just because I was around him a lot. Or like I've got this other friend back in college, and I've totally cut this out of my life. But he would laugh, and when he would laugh, he would bounce his shoulders. You know, he would like laugh. It was just his natural laugh. But I noticed myself one day like randomly bouncing my shoulders when I laughed. And I was like, I don't do that. And I don't know why I'm doing it. But the more time that I spent with him, the more it would happen. And now that I don't spend time with him, I don't really bounce my shoulders. I have a weird laugh, but it's beside the point. But here's the thing, the more time that we spend with God, the more that we begin to look like him. The more that we spend time with God, the more that it changes us, and we begin to act like him. We begin to say the things that we need to say. We begin to talk like Jesus. We begin to walk like Jesus. So the more time that we spend with God, it changes us. So spending time with God changes us. Question: how has spending time with God changed you? And have you spent enough time with God to see a difference? Because maybe we're not spending enough time with God and we haven't seen any results from spending time with him. Point number 2. Ready? Hey, you're following us? Come on. All right. Point number 2, people will look at you different. People will look at you different. Okay, so in our passage, Moses came back down the mountain. Aaron and the Israelites were afraid, right? Again, my brain works in side notes and footnotes, and so this is a little bit of a side note, but stick with me, okay? Now, in the original text, the word used for radiant, I have to read it because otherwise I'm going to mess it up. Karan. It's spelled with a Q, pronounced with a K, but it's karan, and it means to shine or to send out rays, okay? Radiant. Glow, or grow horns. So there's actually a famous sculpture done by Michelangelo of Moses where his face is not radiant, but he has horns. Do we have that picture, maybe? Oh, it's in the top of the screen. You can kind of see it. But, I mean, this is a very famous sculpture. You can Google it too. Moses, Michelangelo. But to grow horns. Now, honestly, like if I was an Israelite and I came back and I saw Moses come back down the mountain and he had those horns, I probably would be a little bit afraid. Right? Wouldn't you? I mean, if I was standing up here with like little nubby horns, you guys would be like, what? Anyway, you're already like, what in the world is happening? But now, yeah. Anyway. People will look at you different. When we're at camp, we love to, like our students, what'll happen is during worship, and you'll get a little bit of taste of this here at the end, hopefully. But like during worship, the students will come and they'll stand in the front of the stage. Like they have all their seats back there, but they'll come and they'll stand in front of the stage and they will jump and they will dance, and it gets hot and sweaty and it's super nasty, and especially at middle school camp, they smell. But don't tell them. Right? But like it's an awesome time where they're worshiping up front, and like at the end of the week, we do a lot of different surveys trying to figure out what did you like, what didn't you like, how could we make camp better, all the. But one of the things that we get a lot is that students are like disappointed and sad because they love this environment at camp. They love being able to come up front and raise their hands and worship because everybody is doing it. It's not weird because they're all worshiping together. They're all jumping up and down together. They're all stinky together. But then when they get ready to go back home, it's different, right? They go back to church, and like some of them have more of a pew type setting. Some of them have this type setting. Some of them have different settings all in their churches, and they don't feel comfortable raising their hands and jumping up and down because they're worried that people will look at them differently. They're worried that people are going to look at them and be like, whoa, like, what'd they feed you at camp? But the thing is, it should be like that. We shouldn't worry about what's happening because people are going to look at you differently. When you spend time with God and it changes you, you're going to act different than other people. There's going to be a change in your life, and people will look at you differently, and it shouldn't be a bad thing. It should be something that we're excited about because we want other people to see what God has done. When we're interacting and worshiping and learning and spending time with God, and it is changing us from the inside out, there should be this excitement to show other people what that's about. So what if they look at you different? Now, if you start growing horns, that's a different story. But question, when have you experienced people looking at you different for your faith specifically? And it goes back to the second question I asked you. Have you spent enough time with God for that to happen? Point number 3. Moses had to keep going back. We see in the story that he would cover his face. He would put a veil over his face because he didn't want the Israelites to see that the glory, the radiance was fading. And so what he did was he kept going back. He would take the veil off when he would meet with God, and he would continue to meet. And just because I like object things, object illustrations, I brought myself a little glow frisbee. Anyone play glow in the dark frisbee before? But what happens, you probably won't be able to see it, because can I walk to the side in the dark? Is that okay? Josh, give me a nod. All right, cool. All right, so, sorry, when it's glowy, right, it stays glow for a little bit, but as over time, it fades, right? Right, and so you just have to keep going back to the light, and it gets glowed up, and it's super fun. And I was going to throw it at somebody, but then I thought I might hit somebody in the face and then get in trouble, so I decided not to. But over time, it fades, right? So this is what happened to Moses, okay? Hopefully that gives you a little bit of illustration, and we can play Frisbee later. But Moses had to keep going back. He had to keep going back to meet with God in order to, reignite the fire, right? And some people think that that's what we have to do every year. Like every year we go to camp and they think, oh, at camp I'll get my reset, right? Or on Sunday morning I'll get my reset. But that's not the case. This is the good news this morning, is that is not the case because of somebody named Jesus. Now, if you will, flip ahead to 2 Corinthians 3, verses 10 through 18. It says this: "For what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. And if what was transitory came with glory, how much greater is the glory of that which lasts? Therefore, since we have such hope, we are very bold. We are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. But their minds were made dull. For to this day, the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is a spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit." Paul reminds us, he looks back and tells us that Moses had to cover his face because he didn't want the Israelites to see the fading glory. But he also reminds us that we're not like Moses in that manner. Verse 16. "But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away." Whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Because when we turn to the Lord, we invite Christ into our heart. It's no longer a place that we have to go. We don't have to go meet with God on a mountain, unless you really like mountains, and you can. But you can meet with God in the mountain just like you can meet with him in your living room. When anyone turns to Christ, the veil is taken away. And here's the thing. You have the ability to meet with God in intimate moments if you're willing to make the time for him. You have the ability to meet with God in intimate moments if you're willing to make the time for him. Camp is awesome. I love camp. It's fantastic. Revivals, I've been to a few. Some of them are really good. Some of them not really my style. But they're also good because you get the chance to get away. You get the chance to spend intentional time with God outside of your normal routine. And those things are awesome. But the thing is we don't have to wait for those moments to have a spiritual high, a spiritual moment with God. We can have those moments at any time. Paul also reminds us of the change that occurs. In verse 18, he says, "We with unveiled faces are being transformed." We are being transformed. Not that we've been transformed, but that we are being transformed. Why would you only want that to occur on occasion? Why would you not want that transformation, becoming more like Christ, walking more like Christ, spending more time with God, to be something that you do on the daily? Not just something that happens on a Sunday morning or once a week at summer camp. I like to use this illustration a lot, but how many of you charged your phone last night? Question: will that last this whole week? Did anyone say yes? No, it doesn't work like that, right? Imagine if you only charged your phone once a summer. What if you only charged your phone once a week on a Sunday morning from 9 to 10 a.m.? One, you probably wouldn't get your phone charged unless you had one of those new ones, but that's also a side note. But like your phone once a week, it wouldn't work, right? You would make it maybe through the end of the day, depending on how much time you spend on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, right? You would make it a little while, right? Unless you had to drive somewhere and you use it as a GPS, then you're out of luck. You're not even making it through the end of the day. But like if you charge your phone once a week, it wouldn't work. So why would you let your spiritual life be the same? Why would you wait for a camp? Why would you wait for a revival? Why would you wait for a Sunday morning to have those moments with God? Because you can meet with God in intimate moments if you're willing to make the time for him. One of my favorite things when I moved down here to North Carolina, we moved down in 2015, and I didn't actually get the chance to go here until like summer 2018, 2019. One of my favorite things is Bowman Gray Racetrack. Anybody? Come on. The Madhouse? Yeah? I love it, okay? There's a lot of reasons why I love it. But here's the thing, like, you know, at the racetrack, right, like when they get to like the really expensive cars, it's kind of boring because they just go in a circle for a really, really long time, right? And sometimes in our faith journey, it feels like we're just going in a circle for a really, really long time, doing the same thing over and over, going nowhere. But the thing about Bowman Gray or racing in general is that, like, they're not just going in a circle to go in a circle, right? They're racing. And the closer that they get to hitting their line, the faster their time is. But every lap looks a little bit different. Every position they move up, it looks a little bit different. And I think, like, in our faith journey, like, we are on that track. We're racing, right? We're not racing for nothing. We're racing is to win because that's what the Bible tells us to do. But here's the thing, like, sometimes it feels like we're going through the monotony of just going through. But let me ask you this. Like, how can you get to the point where you are hitting your line? When you're hitting that perfect line that speeds up, that gets you the fastest time. You guys get what I'm saying? Like if they hit this perfect line, right? They go around in a circle, but if they hit this perfect line, then it's a faster time. And every time they go around the track, it looks a little bit different because there's different cars in the way, there's different wind, there's all these different things, but it feels like it's monotonous, but really they're accomplishing something in the monotony. So I guess that's supposed to be a little bit of an encouragement to you guys. Because sometimes it feels like you're going through the monotony of everyday life and you're trying to do your devotions and you're trying to read your podcast, but that would be weird. But you're trying to listen to your podcast and you're trying to read your books and you're trying to do all these things to grow closer to God, and it feels really monotonous. But do you realize that even in the monotony, you are meeting with God? But it takes getting away from distraction. At camp, it's super easy to get away from distraction. At home, not so much. So are you spending your intimate moments with God not distracted, not scrolling through your phone, reading a verse, and then going over to Facebook or checking your email? Like, are you spending those intimate moments with God, doing your best to hit your line in the monotony? Because don't forget this. Spending time with God changes us. People will look at you different. And you have the ability to meet with God in intimate moments if you are willing to make time for him. All right. Questions to ponder. These are things that throughout the rest of the week, I just want you to reflect on. Okay, you don't have to, these are not answer out loud. I know sometimes when we do this on Wednesdays, kids will answer them right away, but really they're supposed to be like, what's the word? Rhetorical? Yeah. I was not going to say that word first. I don't know what I was going to say. But here's your questions to ponder. You ready? Great. Are you stuck holding on to the highs of the past? Are you stuck holding on to spiritual highs of the past, hoping that that is enough to get you through? Are you finding new ways where you can meet with God to be transformed? Some of you have a really good routine, I'm guessing. Some of you probably have the same like Bible reading plan, devotional plan that you do. But are you finding new ways that you can meet with God? Are you finding ways that like challenge you? Are you finding ways that can stretch you a little bit, that may be different or harder or maybe take more time, but are you finding new ways to meet with God? Is there transformation occurring in your life? Why or why not? Is there transformation occurring? Because when we meet with God, remember, it changes us. When we meet with God, it changes us. So are you being transformed? Paul tells us that we are being transformed. So are you being transformed? Why and why not? And does the image you reflect or radiate look more like you or more like Jesus? Does the image you reflect or radiate look more like you or more like Jesus? Those are your questions to ponder. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the chance to meet with you this morning. God, we thank you for the opportunity to just be in your presence, to meet with you in this way, with our community, worshiping and singing and opening your word and laughing and drinking coffee and all those things that we get to do together. But God, help us to remember that it doesn't have to be a church service, or it doesn't have to be a camp, or it doesn't have to be a revival or something like that to be able to meet with you in an intimate way, to be able to reflect you to the people around us. So God, it's our prayer this morning that we can find ways to meet with you in intimate moments throughout this week and next week, in the summer and on. Because you, by sending Jesus, have given us the opportunity to meet with you. We don't have to go up to Mount Sinai to meet with you and then let it fade and go back up. But God, we can meet with you in every moment. So God, help us to realize that your presence is with us. Help us to meet with you in those moments and let it be something that transforms us. Let it be something that changes us, changes the way we talk, changes the way we walk, changes the way we act, changes the way that we interact with people on social media. God, thank you that we have the ability to meet with you. Thank you for the moments in the past that we've had these spiritual highs of camps where we are able to just feel extra close. God, we look forward to the next time that we have one of those super close, intimate moments. But up until then, let us draw even closer to you than we are right now. Jesus, we love you. It's in your name we